Hello, beginning drawing class. I wanted to start out your video today by going over the materials that I had you order, just to talk about what those materials are and how you can use them. So let's get into it. The first material I want to go over is the soft charcoal, which is also sometimes called vine charcoal. And on the Amazon wish list, I had you guys order it from this little container, which gives you plenty of sticks. Essentially, charcoal is actually just wood that's been burnt in a specific way, for the most part, especially the soft charcoal is what this is. And this soft charcoal is good for preliminary drawing. It's a very light, loose material. And so it's not for drawings that you want to get pitch black and really dark and solid. This is more useful for things like quick figure drawing or sketching, or when you're starting out a drawing, if you don't want to commit too much to really dense lines pressed into the paper, this will make a more subtle line that you can wipe away easier. One of the biggest mistakes that drawing students make in the beginning is they press way too hard, and they'll go in and create lines right at the beginning of the drawing that can never be erased because they are pressed so hard into the paper. And so you want to be careful with your materials. And so a lot of drawers will start out with the softer charcoal. When you are ready to really commit and get some darkness in the drawing and build up some material, that's why I had you guys get the compressed charcoal. And I recommend these alpha colors. Compressed charcoal is slightly different composition than the soft charcoal. It's charcoal pigment that's been crushed and bound with a binder, so it's a lot more condensed. And so the compressed charcoal sticks will go a lot darker. You go through them quite easily, and so that's why I had you guys get 12. And when you're using these charcoal sticks, even the soft one, you guys can use them on their side to lay down a lot of material to cover. You can hold them at a point to draw a line. You can break them off if they get rounded, but these are really great drawing tools. Another one of the charcoals I asked you guys to get is the white charcoal, which is actually white pastel. And this will help you because light and dark is really important in drawing. And so having the ability to add white on top of your other drawing material, or white that's brighter than actually, let's say, the newsprint paper, can be really useful. It helps extend out the range that you can use. So these are really great materials, and the compressed charcoals, both the white and the black, they build up quite well. And so most people don't know this, but you can actually lay down a lot of material to get a pleasing texture and real believable spaces. All right, so the next material I'm going to go over is the eraser. So I prefer the white plastic erasers. That's why I had you guys order those. What you want to do when you get your eraser is not only take it out of the plastic casing, but I also want you guys to take the eraser out of the cardboard sheath too. Because just like the charcoal sticks can be used on their side as well as the tip, so can the eraser. So you'll want to expose the whole thing so that you can be using more of it to erase as opposed to just what's poking out the cardboard. Another tip for the eraser is when you first open it, it's got nice sharp edges. So you can erase with really fine detail. As you start to use it, it'll start getting worn down and rounded out a little bit. And so you can actually take a pair of scissors and cut off edges to recreate sharp edges to get fine detail. So it's a really important tip. That is the eraser. Next, I've got the art pencils, the graphite pencils. So what's important is you guys have at least the 2B. The way these pencils work is there's two grooves, sort of sides of the spectrum on these, the B and the H's. And the B is softer grade lead, and the higher the number, the darker and softer it is. So the darkest here is 8B at the very bottom. And then lighter would be the 6B, the 4B, just B. And then up at the H's, the H stands for hard, and those are actually, I find, too hard for art drawing. So I want you guys just sticking with the B grade pencils. And the 2B is pretty standard for line work. You can even use it to shade. It gets pretty dark, but the 4B to 8B grade graphite pencils are really good for shading and getting very dark if you want to. So that's how these work, and I'll go over how to use the pencils later when they're more relevant. So that is the pencil. And then you guys are going to need a ruler. That's important. And then I have a couple optional materials on the list. This is painter's tape, and I'll be showing you guys how to use this in a second, but it's highly recommended. This is workable fixative. So like I was saying, with the compressed charcoal, you can build up a lot of material, but sometimes you need to spray it with this workable fixative, which is like a light glue basically, and it seals the charcoal into the paper so you can continue to add more on top, but it also allows you to erase and work with what you've already sprayed. So that can be useful, especially if you want to keep things tidy. Drawing can be really messy. And so I'll show you the setup when I get to the exercise for how to keep things a little tidier. If you guys can see this painting I'm working on, you can see the garbage bags poking out behind it. If you guys have a flat blank wall, one of the best places you can draw is just pin your drawing paper up on top of a garbage bag, have another garbage bag on the ground, and it'll collect all of the shavings. And so it just keeps everything clean. You'll also want paper towels or napkins to do blending and wiping on the page. One other material is something called a blending stump. So it helps you get fine detail. It's just a soft paper-like material that lets you scooch the material into finer detail areas. So those are the drawing materials. And so then I just wanted to talk to you guys about the paper, the drawing board, and then we'll get into linear perspective. So I had you guys order 2 different kinds of paper. This is newsprint, and you can see it's the color of a newspaper. It's not pure white. And this is softer paper. It's more throwaway paper. It's for quicker sketches. So the in-class exercises should usually be done on the newsprint unless I specify otherwise. The newsprint is for quicker things. So the first thing I'm gonna have you guys do is create a value scale to explore your materials, and you will do that on newsprint. And both of them are 18 by 24. By default, when I ask you guys to do a drawing, I want it to be done 18 by 24. And part of why I do that is the larger you draw something, the more room you have for detail. I rarely paint a figure less than life size because you have to sacrifice so much detail and information as you begin to scale down. So it actually serves you guys well to be drawing a little bit bigger. So that's the newsprint. And then you have the nicer white paper. This is mostly for your homework assignments and the more lengthy assignments. It is a lot lighter than the newsprint, and so you should check them against each other and see that difference. The newsprint is quite gray. The homework paper is pure white, pretty much. It's thicker, so it can take more of a beating. One thing that a lot of people don't know is that you use a lot of pressure when you're working, or you should. When you're racing, it should be really vigorous. I'm usually pressing as hard as I possibly can. When you're trying to get a really dark area drawn, you should be pressing as hard as you possibly can. And so paper can rip because it can. Cheaper papers can't stand up to that. So make sure to use the white paper for drawings that are going to take a little bit more of a beating, especially the homework assignments. And then the last material I have for you guys is the drawing board, which is optional. A drawing board is just a clip or 2 on a board. And the advantage of this over just pinning to a wall is you can walk around with this. So if I wanted to watch a movie downstairs and work on my homework, I could just pin my homework drawing paper on here and walk around with this. Or say if I wanted to draw outside, I could take this board. And so it's about portability. You can substitute this really easily with just a smooth, cheap piece of wood from somewhere like Lowe's or Home Depot and just a couple clips. So that is the last material, I believe, that I asked you guys to get. So next, I am going to set up a little drawing workspace and talk to you guys about value scales. Thanks. So I'm over here by my little garbage bag pin station, and I've got some of this garbage bag down on the floor to catch the shavings. Just another reminder about the cleanliness of drawing. In undergrad, I used to draw like this without the garbage bag, and it was pinned above my bed. And when I moved out of my apartment and moved the bed, there was like this atomic shadow of charcoal powder that just created this fake silhouette of where my bed was. So be careful. So here I've got set up the beginning of the exercise I want you guys to do, exploring the materials. I want you guys to create what's called a value scale. So I'm just going to show you what that looks like real quick. So this is a value scale. And so what this is it's showing the range of lightness and darkness from white to black. And that is what you guys will be doing with the materials I had you order. And so let me just show you what I want you to do. There's four different materials I want you guys working with here. And I want you to use 3 different ways of setting up these value scales. So that way you can get practice with different ways of working with materials and different tools. So the first value scale that I want you guys to make is with the soft charcoal or the vine charcoal. And this one I want you to just freehand. So you can see here that I put painter's tape. This is going to be for the compressed charcoal turning into the white charcoal. And one quick note about the painter's tape. I had to press the painter's tape against my clothes once and then put it down on the paper because as is, it was too sticky. So it actually ripped up the newsprint because it was too sticky. So hopefully it won't do that. And the way to get around that is by just pressing the painter's tape against your clothes, and it makes it less sticky. So the first value scale I want you guys to do is with the vine charcoal, and I want you to just freehand it just to see how steady is your hand, how straight can you make your lines, and how can you use the eraser to clean up. So try to make it as straight and as much as like this bar as you can, pretty much. So you can see I've got some curves to it. And what I want you guys to do is try to create 10 different values, distinct values. So first I'm going to break it up around the middle. That's 4. If I split them again, that's 8. And then I'll just add 2. And it's okay if this first one's a little wonky. I just want you guys to see the difference between using something like painter's tape and a ruler and then what it's like just freehanding something. All right, so now we've got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 value scales. Let's put our darkest one on the right. And so I'm using the material on its side a little bit to cover a little bit more area. You can see the vine charcoal doesn't go that dark. It's sort of a provisional sketchy material. So another tool that you guys will be using a lot is your fingertip. And the oils from your finger actually go in and help press the materials into the page. And it'll help you pile up more material because it's not just powder sitting on it anymore. It's worked into the tooth, the texture of the page. So since this is supposed to be my darkest one, I'm going to try to get it to go as dark as I can. So now that I've wiped the material in, I can apply a second layer to it. You can try to wipe it again. You can see it's darker than the first application. Another quick note, if you guys are working on a wall, make sure that it's a smooth wall. And if it's not a smooth wall, you can pin something like cardboard or something smooth behind it. I just realized this is a stucco wall. You guys will get a lesson in unwanted texture. So the next time I'm over here at the station, I will have a piece of smooth board behind this to have the texture. All right, so as you can see, one application is a lot lighter than the multiples here. And just to speed things along, since I know this is going to go the lightness of the page over here, I'm just going to start filling these in and I'll redefine the boundaries later. Once you guys get the idea, you can get started on this. So what I think I'm actually going to do is create a smooth gradient to the white of the page first, and then I'll break it up. It seems to be more efficient. So this is, I'm creating the differences by putting more pressure on the darker side of my scale, wiping and reapplying. And the soft charcoal just is not going to get that dark by its very nature. All right, so do the best you can. So there's a severe limitation to how dark this material can go, but there's a lot more of a range I can pull out of the lightness. So make sure to be using your eraser to kind of get some of that modulation of value. And this one on the right, on the left, should just be the white of the page. And then the next should be just barely any material. More. Sometimes material will get worked into your fingertip, into the grooves of your finger, and you can actually just use that to apply more. So I don't want to take too much of your guys' time because this is pretty basic. So with more time, I would just continue to try to get more variation. You can see these are all pretty much the same shade. So the idea with this is how you control the variation and get more of a range. So if I were to keep working on this, I would definitely continue to try to differentiate these values a little bit more and see if I could get it to go a little darker. So let's just move on for the sake of time. So the next value scale you're going to do should be with the compressed charcoal stick that goes a lot darker. And then I want you to work it in and layer the material and transition it to actually the white stick. So let's actually just create the gradient first, and then we'll create the division. So I just want to show you how much darker the compressed is than the soft. It's important for you guys to see that. When you want to go pitch black, the compressed charcoal is the material you want. So drawing is pretty messy on the hands and the fingers. So what I try to do, especially if I'm working in the white material and the black, is I reserve certain fingertips for the charcoal. So my pinky will just be the white Conti smearing, and then everything else will be the charcoal, just so that way they don't get muddy. One of the dangers of using the white drawing material is it will create kind of a muddy gray if you're not careful, if you put too much of it around. So with the first value scale, we use the white of the page to the lightness of the page to actually create the lighter values. With this one, we're actually going to be combining the white material to create those grays and not use the translucency of the material against the page. I've got a paper towel to wipe my fingers. Now I'm going to build up the white material. So this newsprint isn't a pure white paper. So you can see the white material is actually lighter than the newsprint. That can be used to your advantage when you want to create more of a dramatic value range. So part of my challenges with this demo is the fact that I am on a textured wall. So it's making the material pick up a little funny. So I'm using my pinky to blend just the white. I'm going to move to my ring finger to blend gray, and I'm going to wipe off the charcoal. And so my pinky finger is going to be the white, and then ring finger is going to help me with this gray transition. And a lot of people are surprised to find out how much material you need to apply. It's a lot of material if you want things to look realistic. One of the biggest mistakes people make is not using enough material. And that's all art forms. I'm guilty of it myself in painting. All right, so we're working in gradient. And then I think I'm happy enough with it to put in some dividers. So let's break it up. Oh man, I'm terrible at eyeballing. We'll just, let's be cleaner about this. So if we measure this, we can easily break this up to 10. Well, in theory. I'm just gonna roughly put in the dividers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. All right, so I got 9 in this one. To do it nicer, you could measure. So that's what I'd recommend. I'm just trying to be quick for you guys. So then once you've got those dividers in, you can take pains to build up more material and start differentiating the different squares. And you can build up quite a bit of material in these mid-tones. So let's say here, because we're not relying on the white of the page, actually build up those grays. All right, so you guys get the idea. If I were to spend more time on this one, I would sharpen up the lines and create more difference between these. And so you guys shouldn't spend a ton of time on these. Only an hour total for all three is the right amount of time. So the last value scale I want you guys to do is just with the 2B pencil. And if you want to, you can extend the range that goes from your 2B to the 4B or the 6B that you have in your box. And for this last one, I want you to use the ruler to try to make yourself a nice, neat rectangular box. And then also use the ruler to make sure that your units are equal. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make each one of these an inch. Okay. And I want you guys to try to make these a little bit nice, nicer than what I'm doing. It's good to practice precision in your technical skill and your control over these materials. So that's why it's worth doing it a little tidier. But it will take longer. So with the graphite pencils, again, you can use the side of it to lay down a little more material. And so explore using your pencil that way. This is going to be the darkest square. One thing that's nice, so you see the hard lines, I press pretty hard. One of the things I want to stress most to you guys is you want to use light pressure in the beginning. I will never be able to erase these lines out, but the good news about that is as I'm shading over them, they're also not disappearing. And so I can use that to my advantage to go a little quicker and rougher building up those textures. So the graphite pencils give you a little more control. They're a little slower to build up the same amount of material on the page. I prefer the compressed charcoal for my drawings just because it's so much quicker and easier to get it to go very dark. So even though the 2B pencil is a pretty dark grade of pencil, it still takes quite a bit to build up and a lot of pressure. So I continue to build more variation into this bar. And my fingers are covered in compressed charcoal, so I want to be mindful of that. I would not want to blend this graphite with my charcoal material. So I'm using my other hand, which has some clean fingers, to blend some of this graphite into the page. A lot of this texture you're seeing is because I am on a stucco wall. And so just when you're doing this, make sure you're not on a textured wall and it'll go a little smooth there. So I'm just going to keep building this up. So blending it into the page, it does the same thing as the charcoal. It works the material into the actual fibers of the page, which allows you to put more. And so drawing can be time consuming. It can be a process, oops, almost of layering. So you can see I ripped the page there. This is why the homework should be done on the white paper, because if you're trying to draw considerably and in depth, the newsprint can only take so much before it starts to fall apart. There are artists that will then collage a second piece behind it and the rips become a part of the composition, but you guys probably don't want to deal with that. So that's what I'm asking for. And this one should just fade to the white of the page by the time you get to the end. And this is really just for you guys to understand what your materials might be useful, also to get practice in how to use them. So next, I'm going to show you linear perspective. So take about an hour doing these guys. So I just wanted to show you what this will look like once the tape is off. So you can see it's a perfectly clean line. The painter's tape can be a very useful tool. And so here you can see it's ripped the page a little bit. So even pressing against my clothes wasn't enough. So next time I will press it a couple more times against my clothes to make sure that it's not so sticky it tears the paper. So be careful of that. The white paper is less likely to rip like this with the tape.